Put mental health first because if you don't, then you're not going to enjoy your sport and you're not going to succeed as much as you want to. So it's okay sometimes to even sit out the big competitions to focus on yourself because it shows how strong of a competitor and person that you really are rather than just battle through it.
That is Simone Biles, the great Simone Biles, talking about why she's not competing. She pulled out from the Olympics, and it wasn't physical, but it was mental. And she's catching some flack, people calling her weak and soft and a host of other things, which is really interesting. Tanya Pinkins is here, of course, but let me welcome to the show, back to the show, the one and only Dr. Robin Smith. Thank you.
To be here, always, always part of the family.
Yes, you are. When you hear the backlash, because we are, and it's usually white men talking about how she should buck up, and suck it up. And, when I was growing up, and I truthfully was in a similar camp at one point until I started to educate myself about how this works. How should we be looking at mental health as a collective?
Yeah, how we should be looking at mental health as a collective is that self-care is at the root, and neglecting the self is also at the root of destruction. And so it makes sense. I mean, I'm not surprised at all that people are ragging on Simone. When I watched her before she even said she wasn't going to compete, I had this sense that she was on her way out because it felt like she had heard a voice within that said, be done. And how often, Karen, do we ignore that inner voice that comes as a whisper, and then it gets a little bit louder, and then it yells, trying to get our attention before destruction arises? And so I'm wondering, and I'm glad we won't ever find out, what would have happened to Simone had she ignored that voice and continued to perform, what, breaking her neck, and then she would be, this glorious hero that we would throw under the bus and forget about. So I think she and Naomi Osaka as well, I think that some of these young sisters who are coming up are recognizing that they are not the property of anyone and have made a decision to take care of themselves.
We've been conditioned to suck it up, all of us suck it up. You got to suck it up, push through, push through, push through. As a person that sees patients, and as you're talking, I was thinking last Olympics, she was being sexually molested by the team doctor, Larry Nasser, who's now in jail. Right. Who knows whether this was triggering for her to be in this Olympic environment, reminding her of the trauma that she endured and sucked it up and won gold for America and was the hero for the Olympic team. Who knows if that wasn't triggering? I don't know, but
not only who knows, she does not owe us a detailed explanation about anything. And that is a piece of the entitlement that you're hearing, particularly from men. You're saying white men. I've also heard a number of Black men who are talking about it a little differently, but are saying they're disappointed. I'm saying, well, disappointed in what? Disappointed that someone made a good decision for herself. And so this, to me, is really about changing the power dynamic that men often have over women. I think your point also about whether or not she's been triggered by that former abuse, right? I mean, it could be. And what is going on racially also in this country could be stirring her in a way that she is rethinking and reevaluating who she owes what to and who she does not. So she may not be talking about all of that, but her ability and her courage, I mean, to call her weak, this is about one of the most courageous acts that both she and Naomi. So, because people gave them a hard time. They say Naomi's young and she'll have to grow up. And I'm thinking, well, what, grow up into a woman who gives her power away? Grow up into a woman who pushes past herself until destruction. So there is something that we are really in denial of. And the other piece, and I've talked about this before on your show, has to do with the legacy of slavery. People will ask, well, why do you always have to bring up slavery? And I'm saying, well, because slavery is still living itself out in many, particularly Black women. So when Black women were raped on the plantations or in a local house where they are working in 2021, and they suck it up because they are trying to put their children through private school now, or they don't want to lose their opportunity. There's been punishment, particularly for Black women who talked about their pain and advocated for themselves. So to call her weak really is a manipulation of the people who hold power, usually.
And when you talk about the slavery thing, you have to remember that in slavery, they used to beat us and ask us to smile through being hurt.
Yes.
I one of the things that I'm grateful for in my own soul is that I've reached the level of wisdom where I know that the only answer to anything is I want to and I don't want to. And no one else is entitled to an explanation beyond that. I want to, I don't want to. That is sufficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and this whole thing even about the goat, so is she no longer the goat? This is the other thing, that if she is only the greatest of all time because someone else crowned her, then they own her. But when you are the greatest of all time because you know it to be true yourself, it really does not matter whether or not the powers that be crown you, because their crowning is actually to beat you down, not to elevate and lift you up. So she's very clear, I believe, that she is indeed the greatest of all time. And I've worked with a lot of professional athletes. I've worked with them privately. People don't know who they are because I don't kiss and tell. So, but I know what it is like, the pressure that these high profile athletes are under, and the fear, whether it is to, come out of the Olympics, like just do it one more time, take it for the team. Well, she decided that she's on Team Simone, and whether it's coming out about her mental well-being, the skateboarder, I think it was skateboarder who just the hockey player who just came out as gay. I mean, there are people who are just deciding that you either take me as I am or don't take me. And so we're not used to that kind of strength and power.
Yes. And people's celebrity doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the people who gave it to you to use you to sell what they want to sell.
Absolutely.
So, I always tell people, do what you can live with at 3 o'clock in the morning when there's nobody else there. If you can live with it, you got a good life going for you.
Yeah.